Hi, and welcome to What's Not to Like. Today we're looking at Glass Road by Uwe Rosenberg. You may have seen our preview where we looked at a couple of features of the game, and I want to talk a bit further about those today and put some context on the way the game is shaped up. Just to say that we're not trying to tell you how to play the game or look at every single detail of the game. Our aim in this video is just to pick up some features that we think sort of gives some insight into how a designer is thinking. Now, the game is very much in that genre of games that we get quite a lot of, where a player will have an individual player board. This is the player board here, and as you can see, he can build forests, or he has forests and sand pits and groves, and the aim is to build buildings in the spaces that take off those other elements if need be to generate more resources. So it's about resource management, buying buildings off this track here, and these are the resources here that we're using to do that purchasing. So it's quite a familiar context, but as I say, starting from the idea of a player having a player board. Now, you see that in a lot of games, as you know, and what it tells me when I play a game like that is that the game is strongly solitaire. That's not to say that you're not playing with other players, but you are going to be pretty well engrossed in your own development of a particular player board, and that's where your focus is going to be. And I think what we're trying to point out today about this game is that that is quite a familiar way of designing games at the moment. You may see a lot of reviews where people talk about there is low interaction between players, and sometimes that is taken as a general criticism of a game, as though all games need to have high interaction. And I think what I want to suggest today is that this is a game where it illustrates very well that not all games need to be highly interactive at all, and that in fact the hobby is inclining towards games that don't have high interaction, where players can enjoy their own play individually, but obviously there's a social context between the players. So let's see how that's done. So this particular board is the resource management board, and what you have on here are a number of resources which you can develop by one means or another, moving them around the dial like this. Now, as you move them round, so this part of the dial will move behind those resources, and as it does that, the key resource, which in this case is the glass, will raise in value. So the maximum glass you can have is 3. So you're pushing these resources on this side up higher and higher and higher, simply so that your glass can stay at 3, and if you use some glass up to 1, it'll move down like that. So you back up to your resources here. So there's a little chasing game between the resources and the glass. Similarly, on this dial, you have bricks on this side and the other resource on that side. Now, the point about that particular board, as far as I'm concerned, is that it is a bit of a conundrum. I played it and I just couldn't quite get my head around how I was going to keep these ones moving forward in the very best way so that this one would max out each time. And every time I seemed to be getting somewhere, lo and behold, I used up some glass here, and the resource count went down significantly on this side. So I felt that here was a game within a game that was really occupying me. So if you're playing in a solitaire type situation like this type of game is, having something that really engages you individually, like that board there, is very, very helpful to make the game a lot of fun. Now, the second conundrum in the game is how you use these cards in the game. There are 15 cards, and in the course of a whole round of play, you'll use all 15 cards, so you use them at one at a time. Well, that's quite a predictable system. We've probably all played games like that where we know we've got to use everything at some point. But what Rosenberg has done with this, which works really well, is that you place one of your cards face down in your turn, and everybody places one face down. And then the first player will turn that card over and say, oh, I'm using slash and burn. Now, any player who has still got slash and burn cards remaining in their hand here will have to play that card out from their hand. Now, as they do that, this will have an effect on this card, so that whoever is this player would have to choose one of these two actions here to do. However, should there be no other player having the slash and burn card in their hand, then that player who's the active player can use both those actions. Now, what does that do? Well, it gives you a tremendous buzz in the game when you get to use both actions. You feel you've really achieved something because you're getting a bonus, you're ploughing forward. Similarly, if you're a player who's got cards in their hand, it's very, very useful to have those drawn out of your hand by another player, because otherwise you won't play all the cards you possibly could. So when you're playing with these cards in this way and using them, you're in a situation where you're trying to second guess your opponents. Are they going to play the same card as you? What card they have played on the table in front of them? Which gives you quite a buzz, and as Gary said, it gives you a moment of real glee if you achieve the two actions on the card. And similarly, if you happen to have the card in your hand and play it out, that's also very good, because you want to play out all your cards of your hand. So as with this resource board, a really neat, intriguing system that draws you into the game and keeps you very, very busy. However, neither of those two systems is very, very interactive. Okay, you need to second guess your opposition, but you're not really playing against them. It's simply a matter of playing your own hand out, playing your own resource board out, and feeling you're getting somewhere in the building of your buildings. And that's a lot of fun, but you do need two strong systems to make it really work. So the interaction of the game really ends up focusing more on this third board. This board is where the buildings are, and obviously players will want to choose buildings to build. The cards determine when they can take one of those buildings and build it. So there will be a case of looking through that board and trying to be ahead of your opponents in building the building you want. But again, the point I'd like to make about this is that Uwe Rosenberg has given players a chance not to get into a high tension gaming experience here, because it can be very frustrating if you can't get the buildings. And this is why he's put in this feudal lord card. And I'll just read what it says. It says, add one building from each stack to your private offer. And by that means you take one of these, one of these, and one of these. So now you have a little choice there of extra tiles you can build. You can build off here, or you can build out of your private offer here. So again, he's taking some of the tension out of the game by doing that, because that's what some people want to do when they're gaming. They don't want to be in your face competing with other players. They want to have the pleasure of enjoying a puzzle, some interesting decision making, and being able to get on and do things that work for them. So I think that's the way the hobby's moved on quite a lot. And I might talk about a few other games in the next few sessions where we look at games that have more tension and games that have less. Thank you.